Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, the show where we attempt to find the best game within a really specific category. For example, this week we're looking for the best game that's the deep impact to another game's Armageddon. That is to say, a game that came out around the same time as something else that's similar, better, and far more present in the public consciousness. We are inspired this week by Dragon's Dogma 2 coming out on the same day as Rise of the Ronin, which the games aren't too similar, but they're both open world RPGs from massively respected Japanese studios, and for some reason are going head to head, and one of them is definitely going to lose, and it's Rise of the Ronin. But this Team Ninja, they're both out by now, right? By the time this goes out,
depends on when you're listening to this, probably.
Yeah, this will be going out next Tuesday from time of recording. Yep. So I am able to say that Sharif is the Team Ninja guy, and he fucking hates it.
I never said that. Read my review, which will be up on the site for sure by the time you're listening to this.
I really hope this is one of your reviews that gets all the people confused.
No.
Another one.
What does this guy know about Souls games? Anyway, so I'm really looking forward to both games. I'm actually playing Dragon's Dogma 2, which is incredible. I thought everyone on the site was playing it, but I've just spoken to you guys, and like none of you are. So
I'd like to play it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'll probably get onto it next week, but
everyone will be playing it next week for sure.
Yeah. It's I loved the first game, but the first game was difficult in a lot of ways. It was very much like you could tell it was Capcom's first stab at this, and with this one you can tell it's their like second stab at this, because it's like there's so many things in there that are much better. But anyway, not here to review that. So when I said about this topic in the work Slack, the deep impact of the Armageddon, Connor was immediately in there like, you're gonna have to explain that to me, because I am but a child. So yeah, deep impact, and you'll know this, Sharif, because you're an old man like I am. Deep Impact
right.
and Armageddon came out in the same year, and they're both about an asteroid. That's actually where the similarities completely diverge, isn't it? If I remember rightly.
Did they send astronauts to blow up the asteroid in Deep Impact? I can't remember how they stopped it.
But I'm pretty sure
that's the
Deep
point,
Impact,
though.
Yeah,
that's the point that you can't remember. But the two are very similar in a sort of way that what's the Tornadoes movie that's being remade? Twisters, and the other one. They didn't release around the same time.
There was another Tornado movie.
Yes.
Was there?
Yes, I think there's the one. There's the one with. What's his name? Rest in peace. From it's Game Over, man.
I was going to make a joke, but I can't now.
No. What's his name? Longtime friend
Paxton?
of Bill Paxton. Yes, longtime friend of James Cameron. There was that one, and then there was another one. I can't remember what it was. I don't think they released around the same time. But basically, it's the White House Down, Olympus Has Fallen, which the two of them did release at the same time and featured a similar premise.
Things just have a habit of coming out because of the zeitgeist or something, some cultural seeds that get, because like and these things are never like deliberate, because these things are always like in development secretly for years before they actually collide. So it's mad how it keeps happening, and it happens a lot in video games as well. I've been doing a bit of research for this one. I'm sure you guys have also done a little bit of research and ended up on the same web page as I have. I've got a pick later that I want to talk about, but you'll have to subscribe to the extended version of this podcast to hear that discussion, and probably, the video where the three of these people are rolling their eyes at me, etc. Because my pick is extremely me. I'm sorry about that. But if you're listening to the normal version of the podcast, it starts now. Okay, right. First of all, because Mark was subbed in because Alex was meant to be doing this and then had to duck out because he's reviewing Dragon's Dogma 2, funnily enough. So because you're very much in the hot seat and just like crashing into the podcast as though you are some sort of NASA pod full of oil driller guys crashing into an asteroid, what is your pick?
Oh, Christ. Oh, here we go. Right. So, as you said, I'm filling in for Alex today. So, first of all, impossibly big shoes to fill, but I'm going to try my best by imitating his style a bit. So I'm just going to start off by just naming a bunch of video games. They aren't video games that people could have picked for this, which is what he usually does, because I'm not as good as him, but they are going to be video games. So Fuel 2009, Colin McRae Dirt 2, MotorStorm Pacific Rift. What are these? These are video games, and they're racing games that came out around about the year 2010.
Two of those are good as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And that is where I'm going for my pick, because my pick is the cultural tandem, the definitely not forgettable cultural tandem of Blur and Split Second, or Split Second Velocity, which...
Excuse me, Split/Second.
Yes. It has a slash and the word velocity as an optional extra on its name, just if you want that bit of extra spice. So basically, these came out in May 2010, within about a week of each other, and they are both arcade racers that the bigger thing about them is it ain't just racing. They've got a bit of flavour on top of them. In terms of Blur, it's power-ups that are a bit Mario Karty, but if I say that, the people who like Blur are probably going to come after me because they'll feel a bit persecuted, but there's about 5 of them, so I don't care. And Split Second, the best way that I can describe it to somebody who hasn't played it is it's what would happen if Michael Bay made a racing game. Basically, it's about a reality TV show that you're starring in, not of the Jersey Shore kind, although that would be a fun racing game. But yes, basically it's you're doing races that are also kind of movie-style car chases, and the way the power-ups work is that you fill this bar over the course of a race by drifting and overtaking people and not crashing into things, and you can activate kind of environmental hazards and changes in the track depending on how much of this power you've amassed. It can be anything from somebody backing out of a lay-by and taking out one of your foes to like a plane falling out of the sky and completely changing the way the track works, which is fun. And basically, as I say, the premise of them is the same. It's arcade racing, but we need a gimmick to make it more interesting because both of them came about at a time when I think we were kind of in a weird transition in terms of arcade stuff, because it was before everybody decided that it can't be a racing game unless it has tire wear, which is the era we're in now. But it was just after Need for Speed had stopped doing the kind of universally acclaimed Most Wanted underground stuff and was now into trying things like Pro Street and Shift.
Was this the era of like Need for Speed, Shift, and Pro Street?
Oh, this is slap bang in the middle of the two Need for Speed Shift games. Yes,
it was at the time. Yeah.
But yes, it was right in the middle of when nobody knew what was next for arcade racing games. We had Burnout Paradise. We didn't quite know that wasn't coming back. We also didn't know that MotorStorm was on the verge of dying. So it was basically, what's next? And as it turned out, the answer was nothing, because both of these games came out and their studios were closed within like a year, both of them. So
it's mad, actually, now that you mentioned that, about how like the racing game became it's either, as you say, it's like you've got to worry about tire wear and differential and tire pressure and all this other shit. It's basically it's either like Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport, or it's like the arcade racer has become the open world racer, and it's like, if you just want to throw a car about, you're doing it invariably in some sort of like very, very pared down mock GTA set in a Mediterranean style location. You can't get out of the car. All you can do is like drive past ice cream shops, but never actually go in, which is some sort of hell, actually. But
it's the best part. Like all of the buildings that when you're driving around in Need for Speed Underground, I used to just stop outside and try and speculate as to what the building was actually used for. That's a big part of the game.
When Forza Horizon 2 is set in sort of like
Oh, that was Italy and France, like the south of France.
Northern Italy and southern France. Yeah, and it's like, and you can drive through Nice with your trotters up, and you can like, but you go past all these like really lovely looking sort of cafes with that kind of beautiful continental outdoor cafe culture going on, and you can't take part in it. All you can do is your only interaction with the world is rotating some rubber onto it, which is sort of I'm being a little bit, if only you could speak to the monsters here, but yeah, actually, if only you could speak to the dessert shop proprietors. But anyway, so I love that. Out of curiosity, which game is the one you're actually picking? Which one of those is the?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Split Second, because that's just the one that I played more of, just because I bought it because it looked like Burnout, and I didn't actually get Blur until several years after the fact, so I didn't actually get to experience a time when that could have been something more than the last game that came out of the studio before it closed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think you can look back at that, at those two games. Like it's almost like, it's one of those things where you can't write this if you were to like write your script about like the death of a genre or whatever. But those two games represent the end of the arcade racer as we sort of know them, or like have known them for years. And they also represent like Disney going out of the game publishing business.
Oh yes, because that's another weird thing. It was a Disney one as well.
It was a Disney, like Split Second is a Disney game, but it also it is, as you were saying, Mark, of like everyone wasn't sure what's the next big thing in cars, and we have sort of peaked at everything. Like Burnout Paradise is still to this day, in my opinion, unmatched as an arcade racer, and everyone was like a little too skittish of doing some dangerous things. So everyone was testing the waters, and I think that's the best environment for people to try things out and see what sticks. But unfortunately, arcade racers have always been niche. So even though they try things, and I think both games are brilliant, I would also lean Split Second, because I just like even though it's scripted, and once you play one circuit for like 5 times, you know where all the traps are and where all the cranes and rickety bridges and all that stuff. But it was still fun. It had the spirit of Burnout. It had something new and interesting, like, oh, you're around a film set, Michael Bay, like you mentioned. It's like, this is cool. Not something.
It kind of had a bit of a weird kind of narrative in that sense.
Where have you seen that before, right? And even Blur was an arcade car racer with real cars, which is, again, it's a niche within a niche almost, of like, I want to do my BMW M3, but I want to have it have like some weird banana peels thrown out of the exhaust port just as I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like dumb stuff like that. But
was
again,
the beautiful juxtaposition of it, though. I loved Blur is my favorite of those two games. I loved that. I love that so much.
It's just sad to remember those being the end of their era.
And a bunch of my friends really heavily got into Blur, and we were really devastated when it all just shut down later. Okay, all right, let's move on to Kelsey. What have you picked?
I've been really distracted by the fact that Mochi has been cleaning herself behind you.
Yeah, I was going to say there's an appearance in Mochi in the background.
She's given herself a right good wash. Anyway, I was listening, but yeah. So I've gone for one game that apparently came out 2 weeks after a different game, which is very, very similar, which I hadn't played before up until this morning. So I've only played an hour of it. It very well could be the better game, but I think I'm pretty safe in saying that it's not. So my pick is Hotline Miami, which came out 2 weeks after a game called Retro City Rampage, which up until I was researching this game, I'd actually never heard of. And from what I've played of it, which is obviously the first hour, and from the few videos that I've watched, it does seem like a brilliant game. It's very much this parody of 80s, 90s culture. It's got this 8-bit art style where you're running around causing loads of trouble, heavily GTA inspired, and you get that from the outset. But the story is, and I could be completely wrong here, but the understanding that I have of it is that this player basically ends up in this time-traveling telephone booth. Ends up in the future. Telephone booth inevitably breaks, and he's got to find a way to fix it and get home, which is essentially the plot to Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is great. Obviously that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all the Easter eggs that this game supposedly has, and it very much is something that I'm actually going to probably go back and play after this podcast, because I'm curious to see how the rest of it plays out. I have really enjoyed my time with it. That said, Hotline Miami is undoubtedly always going to be the better game in my mind, just because of all the different emotional attachments that I have to it. But Hotline Miami, like I said, came out 2 weeks later, has that same 8-bit art style, has that same all these throwbacks to the 80s. It's got that amazing soundtrack, which is all this 80s inspired synthwave, which I'm pretty sure they got a bunch of artists from Bandcamp to help put that together, which I think was pretty cool. But yeah, the main thing with Hotline Miami for me is it's one of those games where there's more to it than initially meets the eye. I couldn't quite tell you when I first played the game, but I know that when I first played it, I didn't pay attention to the story. I paid attention to very much just completing these tasks that I was being given through the phone that are all very mysterious, and they're all very violent. You're obviously going from room to room, killing various like Russian mafia members and what have you. But as the game goes on, and as you go back and replay it, which I did, and you pay attention to the dialogue, the characters, and just the general happenings in between all this violence that you're getting caught up in, there's something very uncanny and surreal about it. And it was initially one of those games where I was like, is Hotline Miami just violent for the sake of being violent? But then you realize that the developers here have actually somewhat looked into that in the game, because you can see that it has an impact on the characters, or at least you think they do. There's like a meta narrative at play that definitely delves into that you just don't notice on first playthrough, because on first playthrough you're so sort of blown away and distracted by all the vibrant flashing colors that are constant. The game is a headache, to be honest. But it's a good headache, you know. If you can get past that, then it's great, because it's just brilliant.
It's pretty.
Once you get past the novelty of it, you're like, okay, that there's a lot more going on here. There's a lot more to admire about this, and the fact that you can get all these amazing kill combos and what have you. It's just great. I've never played the sequel though. I will put that out there.
I don't think Hotline Miami 2 it's one of these ones where it is as good, and it's very much more of the same, but there's a lot of people who insist that like it's nowhere near as good as the first one, and I think it's just because it hits different, because you've already played the first one, right? And you're never going to get that kind of shock again.
There are certain narrative elements to 2 that are pretty not handled in the best way they could have done it, considering what it was trying to deal with. I think, that's my memory of 2, is like, you didn't need to approach this subject if you didn't have the finesse to sort of talk about it. So
that makes sense.
I've just never touched it, because I've just always been like, okay, I'll boot up Hotline Miami again. It's one of those games that I have so many memories with, because we used to at uni, we'd put ourselves in a dark room, all sit around, and we'd all take turns playing Hotline Miami, and it would just be great. You'd have like some of my friends would just fly through levels like there's no tomorrow, and then there'd be me like, I'm struggling, but you get used to it.
It's such a good. I love that when it's like when a game is like it's basically a shooter, but it's actually a puzzler. It's like I love secret puzzle games like that.
It's very much. If I had to describe a Kelsey game, right, a Kelsey game would be, a game where there's lots going on, there's lots of bloodshed and gore and what have you, but there's something much deeper beneath the surface that you have to dig a little bit to actually get the satisfaction out of. And this is one of those games. This is why it does the same thing as Silent Hill in a way. That's why I like Silent Hill so much. There's lots underneath the surface there to dig into, and you can say the same about Hotline Miami. I think that's why I like it so much personally.
There's a game coming up from Devolver is putting out. It's called Children of the Sun, that I think operates on a similar level. But it's a first-person shooter where you're trying to line up shots in a similar way, where like get everyone with one shot and like refund the bullet. And there's an element to it of like someone who escaped the cult who went back to try and exact vengeance. It's a very dark game. It's coming out soon. I want to say like in a couple of weeks. weeks here.
Yeah, 9th of April. Yeah, I'll add that to my wish list. Thank you.
Quite cool, like how many different things Hotline Miami inspired. Because I would say that Ape Out is definitely inspired by Hotline Miami.
What's It was a joke. Someone, oh man, I can't remember. It's like a shortened name for Ape Out. God damn it. I don't remember.
But I would say that my friend Pedro has real, like, it's very similar to Hotline Miami in a lot of ways. Like, I can definitely see a lineage there. But there's also been like some actually just direct riffs on it. Like, wasn't there a Hong Kong something game?
Hong Kong Massacre, but Hong Kong Massacre is a little bit more John Woo.
I genuinely thought you were going to bring up Sleeping Dogs there. And genuinely, you're
going to bring up what?
Just going to slice it
Sleeping Dogs, yeah.
Oh, no.
And speaking of Hong Kong,
it's just because you said Hong Kong. That's all. That's the only reason why.
There was that. I've never played it. It's just sat on my wish list forever. But there was that Katana Zero, which seemed very very Hotline Miami inspired, but obviously very much a different sort of setting.
And with a pretty trippy narrative element as well, speaking of things under the surface. Like, that game goes hard on narrative in a way that I don't think anyone expected, least of all.
Okay.
Sharif, have you played, like, everything?
I don't know if you know this about me, Jim. I write about video games for a living, so I tend to like to try at least, like...
Yeah, so do I. I've never got time to play them.
It's just like, get like one spoonful of everything just to be like, okay, I understand this. So when I talk about them, I don't sound like a moron. So
I've never worried about that. But I love... So it is Hotline Miami that you're submitting?
Yes.
Interesting.
Retro City Rampage definitely deserves credit, but Hotline Miami is what I am submitting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Sharif.
Okay.
What have you got?
So I'm usually, maybe not usually, occasionally I am Mr. Technically Correct. Because there are things I will stand for, things I want. This week I am going a little bit off base here because I'm going to talk about two games that were perceived in a similar light and sort of ran against each other in a sort of counter-programming way that was very deliberate on one end of that at least, but are not actually the same, but they are remembered in sort of the same way people remember Infamous and Prototype, in the sort of the same way they remember Split Second and Blur. I'm going to talk about, like, the two games I'm talking about is Overwatch and Battleborn, the Gearbox, by most accounts, failure. So the Overwatch had, just to set the scene up, Overwatch was the first shooter Blizzard had made. And the legacy of Blizzard at the time was nigh untouchable. If you made like a trailer of nothing on it and just had the Blizzard logo and said first-person shooter and then a date, people would have lost their minds. Like the name of Blizzard is as legendary as Infinity Ward ahead of like Modern Warfare 2. It just has these, like, you can't describe it now. It's not the company that exists now, for better or worse. And so when a Blizzard is making a shooter and then has been sort of in and out of the limelight because they've been hosting alphas and inviting people and the press, and then there's like this undercurrent of like, oh, is this the biggest game in the world? What's going on? Are they going to dominate shooters like they did with MMOs? Blah, blah, blah. So the anticipation for Overwatch was nothing could stop that, nothing could go against it.
Yeah, palpable.
It was palpable. And then meanwhile, Gearbox was trying something different. They had done a bunch of Borderlands games, very successful, obviously, a ton of fans, but they wanted to do something different. And the big thing at the time was people trying to reinvent MOBAs and trying to put their own twists on. It's like, okay, it's not really top-down. What if we do an action? It's not really, what if it's superheroes? What was it, the DC Superheroes MOBA that they did?
Yeah.
Everyone was trying to do like, what if maybe this is the one that's going to work, in the same way that everyone's trying to do a live service now. These trends come and go. And they tried so hard to tell everyone how this is that game, and with a single player component that's similar to Borderlands, that doesn't have any of the MOBA elements. It's just a really cool first person shooter with really unique abilities and characters that are, you can like it or not, like the Gearbox writing style and tone and comedy, quote unquote, is an, I'm not gonna even call it an acquired taste because I don't think it is, but it's of its time. If you grew up on Hey Ash, what you playing, and if you grew up watching like early internet humor and all that stuff, right up your alley. Like Borderlands 1, when I played it, one of the funniest games I've ever seen. Yeah. Replayed it years later, I am just face-palming in embarrassment that I ever found any of that stuff funny, right? Like that's just, some 14-year-old, right? Right. Yeah. But that game had such strong character that had this amazing anime opening with some really stylish music, hip hop. It went hard, and everyone couldn't stop talking about Overwatch, to the point that when that game was coming out, Overwatch was running counter programming. They were dropping the beta, which is free, as Battleborn was coming out. And it didn't help that, Randy Pitchford, the boss of Gearbox, had like his own stuff on Twitter of like coming after people and trying to tell people what the kind of game it is and what kind of game that is not. Didn't help it. But as someone who played that game at launch, as someone who loves Overwatch as well, it is shocking to me how unlike each other they are, and yet they are almost always thought of, oh, this is the game that killed this is because they put it out next to this other one that's very similar. It's like, no. Battleborn is an action MOBA with a bunch of mobs that are actually inspired more by shooters than MOBAs. Like there's the traditional laning and like 4v4. It has some really interesting characters with really a lot of melee, a lot of dumb like funny designs that have abilities that you wouldn't expect in like a serious-ish game like Overwatch.
Yeah.
And it played really well. Like the single player played really well, and it was co-op. And I want to say it was also one of the early games that did cross-platform. And I look back on that game and I was just like, how it had no chance. And it wasn't even because it did something poorly or because it went against like the titan of the era. It's like, oh, you're going up against Destiny, you're going to miss. No, it was something completely different. And yet it's this Streisand, or it's not the Mandela effect of like something that everyone just agrees happened and it did not. And it's like, no, like has anyone actually played it? And obviously the answer is no, because if they had, they would have said, oh.
Did it die because like Randy Pitchford was basically a bit of a joke at that point?
I think that contributed to it, but I don't think a game would live or die by like one person's VR. Otherwise, like Call of Duty or whatever, would like people understand who Bobby Kotick is or whatever. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Or the abuse that Ubisoft, the allegations of abuse among their staff.
It's difficult to pin it down because obviously, like Borderlands is still popular. But having said that, actually, the new like Tales of the Borderlands didn't do very well at all, did it? There's a bunch of stuff. I don't know how much of Gearbox's sort of fortunes are tied to the perception of him, or even just how associated they are with Borderlands. And Borderlands is very like love it or hate it, right?
Yeah.
So
I think like Borderlands,
it's got into a kind of like period now where I feel like more people will shit on it than we'll talk about how affectionately they feel about it, just because because like Borderlands, like obviously talking about it affectionately, but I feel like a lot more people will they're just over that zany humor, if that makes sense. Like people don't want more of that because we've evolved.
I think it's gone out of style for sure, the writing specifically, but also their games like Borderlands 3 is just it's a sequel to Borderlands 2, and it didn't learn from Destiny, didn't learn from all the advancement in the genre had made, and it sold pretty well. I think it's the best-selling Borderlands game.
I think Tiny Tina's Wonderlands did well as well. Not obviously as well as previous games, but I think it still did okay.
But you have to like feel for these people who were shoehorned into this Borderlands 1 and 2. You're the Borderlands studio, and they tried to do something different, and then it just happened to land against one of the most anticipated games of all time, and it just had no chance. And then there's like this undercurrent of like hatred and people like wanting it to fail, where it was like, why? Like just say you don't like the game, played it, didn't like it, whatever, but like people had almost like this preloaded gun of like, no, this one of them has to fail and one has to succeed. And I just it's icky. The last thing I'll say on Battleborn, which is like the timing of this is brilliant because we didn't plan this, but some modders are bringing the game back because obviously the game was always online and they shut down servers. I think it's called Reborn. And I want to say they managed to get, this is something that's pretty much, I think, started early this year. And so they managed to bring up the single player to make it playable, but some parts of it are not, or some abilities are not. I looked into it a little bit. But the funniest thing about all of this is we seem to be in a sort of resurgence of the action MOBAs, like Smite 2, which is a MOBA, and an action MOBA had this big reveal a couple of months ago. People are bringing back the one that Epic killed, that I think was called Paragon. I don't know what it's called now.
Yeah.
And then Gearbox is bringing back Gigantic, which was another MOBA, another action MOBA that was short-lived but very much beloved. So you almost imagine them sort of talking to 2K to try, hey, let's bring back Battleborn as sort of something. It just seems like the timing is weird. And for them to bring back Gigantic before they think about, maybe there's like publisher business involved in that, that's going to make this way too hard to untangle.
Do you think if... I'm just posing this as like a hypothetical, but do you think if Battleborn came out now, it would have done significantly better? Obviously, with a bit more polish.
I think it would be received better. I think if you sell like that game for $25 or $30 for the single player game, that's a fun action co-op game. That it doesn't have live service elements. That's just a thing with cool abilities that you play, take you and your friends a couple of weekends. I think people will be happy with that, especially now with all the live service stuff. And if you want to have like a free-to-play component, that's the action MOBA with a small player base that is sustainable, that's fine. I don't know if this is what like 2K is going to be looking for, right? That's the problem. But it's a genuinely good game. It's just people just, for whatever reason, just were primed to just dunk on it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's weird. It reminds me of. I think it needs to maybe the whole Gearbox thing. I think maybe Borderlands needs to just go away for a long time, right? And I think I'm reminded of Beavis and Butthead, which became
Beavis and Butthead,
which was like one of the greatest sort of like pop culture touchstones of my generation, and then it was very of its time, and then the zeitgeist just fucking raced away from it, and it died because nobody even fucking watches MTV anymore. What are you on about? And then it came back much later on in a form that was actually kind of better than the original run.
Wasn't that like 2 years ago or something, like very recent?
Yeah, it's still. I think it's ongoing now. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's going to be like. It did have like a little kind of soft revival in like 2011. It didn't take, but this one seems to have taken.
No, this one is recent.
And it was like I was skeptical that it could ever kind of get the magic back, but then like it did. And it was partly sort of absence making the heart grow fonder, but also partly because like the humor had developed a lot, and like it was clearly like Mike Judge writing these characters from the perspective of somebody who'd been around the block a bit and somebody who was looking at life from the other end now, which matured it a lot. But it was still funny and still stupid and like quite grim. It just had a lot more kind of had a lot more going for it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crediting Randy Pitchford and Gearbox with way more kind of capacity to have some kind of like late stage, late career kind of revival of their talents or whatever. But like, I don't know. It's a similar kind of thing, right? Because I think Beavis and Butthead is stupid and steeped in the pop culture of the time, and I wonder if the Borderlands series is that for a particular generation of people. I don't know.
I think there is a Borderlands. I would be interested to play this. I think there's a Borderlands that does the Bill and Ted's thing, like the third movie of Bill and Ted's. Like I think there's a not necessarily more mature, like, oh, we're gritty and this war is hell, but like a smarter look that interrogates the original source material and pushes forward in a meaningful way. As I think that the third Bill and Ted's movie. I think there's if I think
it's in conversation with the original stuff,
yes.
right? Yeah,
and I think they can do that, and I would like to play that. But like, if you just continue making we're just making funny internet jokes from 2010, I'm just like,
no, we can't handle it anymore.
There definitely has to be a period of sort of like self-reflection on the part of the people writing it, and I'm not sure if Pitchford is capable of that. But anyway, so right, I need to pick one of these now. So, okay, let's just pretend we've done the jingle. All right, okay. So Kelsey and Connor. Sorry, Mark. I'm just so used to saying Connor after Kelsey.
I'm just knock off Connor. Do you want that? I'm the guy that gets angry when I lose. I'm just Connor with worse facial hair.
No, me and Connor are always amidst a battle when we're on these podcasts.
Yeah.
So.
I'm so used to saying Connor after saying Kelsey, and also when Rebecca was on the other week, I actually forgot her name and thought her surname was Warren. So like, it's actually worked in your favor as well. So my brain just doesn't work properly. All right, okay. So Connor, see, I've done it with you now. Fucking Connor's not here, right? Kelsey,
rent free. Connor is living rent free in your head.
He really is.
I'd be
He's
pretty
in San
happy
Francisco at the moment. I can't shake him. Okay, so Mark and Kelsey. What I find interesting about your picks is that, to my mind, and it's entirely subjective. It's not necessarily wrong, but to my mind, the ones that you picked are like the Armageddon of the dynamic that we're talking about, right? So I would say that Split Second is very much more widely loved, and I think did a lot more kind of column inches at the time than Blur did. I loved Blur, but it definitely seemed like the ugly stepchild of that whole movement. And same with your pick, Kelsey. I would say that, I think everyone loves Hotline Miami. Certainly on our side of things, like, it's very much it's definitely a critical darling. And Retro City Rampage is
it's a mouthful.
They did like a version on the Wii and stuff, and I know like it's definitely got its fans. Like it's a popular game on its own terms, but like I don't think it had anywhere near the kind of attention that Hotline Miami did. It's certainly not the kind of it's certainly not as well perceived. So it's interesting to me that like you guys picked what I would have considered to be like the Armageddon of their respective kind of pairs. Sharif, you definitely picked the Deep Impact of like the hero shooter, because Deep Impact being so like, I don't think Deep Impact's a rubbish film, but it's just so mid, right? It's just it doesn't have, and it doesn't have like the sheer. I mean, people forget how big a star Ben Affleck was, right? Ben Affleck, to give him his proper name, and
Bruce Willis,
Willis, right?
Like,
and that fucking
Steve
song.
Buscemi, like
I was going to say, isn't Armageddon the one with the Aerosmith song? Because I was going to say that's the one with the Aerosmith song.
Yes,
Deep Impact, not.
And
Deep Impact don't have an Aerosmith song. It's fucked it already. You know?
And his daughter, Tyler.
Like, I would definitely say that most likely to have an Aerosmith song, probably Split Second, right?
Probably Borderlands, to be honest.
Yeah.
No.
So I think on that front, I feel like, to me, I feel like Sharif was closest to the brief, because he's actually picked the Deep Impact of the pairing he's thinking of, and that's specifically what was asked of everyone. Which,
can you blame us as two of the younger folk on the site to actually completely misunderstood the assignment?
It's all right. It's on me. I forgot the number one gym rule, which is pick a shitter.
God damn it!
But I'm not going to pick Sharif. Even though I think you could have definitely won on that technicality.
It's a twist.
But I can't elevate I can't elevate fucking whatever it is. Battleborn, that's what it's called, yeah. I can't elevate Battleborn to that.
Just give it some due. The game has been shat on for years, even before it came out.
Give it a little bit of love,
give it some post. Oh god.
There are two dimensions to this podcast, and one is how do you crowbar whatever the fuck you've chosen into the brief, and the second one is which is the best game, right? And
so the James and Shreve dimension, respectively.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really struggling here, actually. Okay. So, I think of the 6 games that have been brought up, Hotline Miami is the best one in it. Can we all just agree on that?
It's the one with the most cultural impact. Like it's in the same way that the Deep Impact, the Armageddon is.
My job here is done.
Yeah,
it's the one like
it's an impact on my culture.
It's like one of those.
But you know what? Having like significant cultural impact and leading to so many games that are directly inspired by it, and even fucking film sequences that are directly inspired by it. You know, we've all seen John Wick 3, right? Or John Wick 4?
Wick 4.
It was John Wick 4. God, there's been so many of them.
Well, James pointed out to me, actually, that one particular segment that you are talking about could actually be referenced to the John Wick Hex game rather than Hotline Miami.
It's not, because the director talked about it in an interview.
Oh, I've never seen that, so that's great. I was right. Great. But yeah. No, James pointed out to me, and I was like, that's like, interesting, actually.
Yeah.
But then couldn't you argue that Hex was perhaps inspired by Hotline Miami? But anyway.
You definitely could. I don't think anyone played Hex apart from Mike Bithell. Okay, right. So, but there's a twist there, because if we're talking about something that had that much cultural impact, it can't possibly be Hotline Miami, because Hotline Miami had like undeniable cultural impact and to this day is inspiring stuff, whereas Deep Impact didn't inspire fucking anything apart from 25 years of jokes at its expense. So, and there's another twist, I kind of think you got to go in the middle here, and I think Split Second.
God damn it.
Because Split Second,
that does not even
You've really let me down here, Jim.
Because Split Second, right, might be the Armageddon to the Deep Impact of Blur, but like it's like winning a sort of like having one leg competition. Do you know what I mean? It's like
they both died.
They're both like, and I think being the sort of like, you know, everyone describes it the way that you did, Mark, quite understandably. It's like, what if Michael Bay designed a racing game? And it's like, yeah, that's why it fucking died.
Yeah, but like both of them don't have
Transformers 2, you know? Like,
both of them don't have that impact that any of those games had, for better or worse. Like people remember Battleborn for all the dunking they did on it, then they remember Split Second, even though it was the better game of the two. So I think it's just like the two within a niche. Like sure, you'll have people go either way, but really though,
right? Oh, sorry, carry on, Mark.
If I may ask, I think part of the thing is that with Armageddon and Deep Impact, it's as much the kind of people thinking that one, people making jokes about one having completely rolled over the other, as it is that actually having happened. And I think with yours, Sharif, as you said, there's a bit of the dissonance of it didn't actually really have to kill Battleborn because they're not really the same. Whereas, for better or worse, Blur and Split Second kind of are.
Yeah.
One is a competitive thing, one is like an action. I mean, if really...
Can I also say as well, Mark's pitch inspired me to imagine a Jersey Shore kart game, which I think we all 100% need. I'd love to like flee around the corner and drop a banana as Snooki, for example. Okay, so just to condense the rationale down to one sentence, okay? So I can't give it to Battleborn because it's frankly too rubbish. Can't give it to Hotline Miami because it's frankly too impactful and too good. So Kelsey, you did pick the best game, but Mark, in picking the most mid of anything mentioned,
this is a new arc of this podcast that I'm not on board
I thought it was
with.
meant to be the best game.
It's not the best game. It used to be, and then it became the worst game, and now it's not even either.
It's the best game that you can argue like fits the criteria.
God damn it.
Kelsey, if you had picked Retro City Rampage, you'd have been in the criteria, but you'd still lost. So, it's a really tricky. It was a really tricky topic, though, because it has to be a game that has this very special relationship with another similar game. So, but that's why it's difficult. So, I'm afraid Mark has won.
I've Keir Starmered my way to victory, and I'm not proud.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I will add to anyone listening to this who haven't played Split Second or haven't played it in years. You can still play it now, and you can do. I want to say online multiplayer using some of those tunneling apps. I think can do
I actually bought it on Xbox recently. It runs on Series X.
And it runs on consoles as well. If you but the PC version, you gotta do some finagling because the resolution stuff, and it's an old game, but it's still functional as someone who played it in 2023.
Yeah,
I can tell you. And it's still
it's
good.
It's not terrible. It's just like it's very.
Just you're gonna have some problems with controller because Xbox controllers are not a thing at the time. Blah blah blah. It's it'll take some doing, but you'll have fun.
I tell you what, though, I don't miss it like I miss Blur. I fucking miss Blur. I loved Blur. I loved shooting missiles out of an Audi TT. So stupid. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast app of choice if you think we deserve it. We probably don't. Apologies to Kelsey. And also, there is an extended version of the podcast that is available now. You can subscribe to it for $2.99 a month. It's available on the VG247 website. And you get other benefits as well, such as ad-free browsing, but ad-free browsing that doesn't, completely cripple the entire internet media model because we still get funding from it. So if that interests you, then go for it. All right, okay. Thank you very much. Everyone say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And then we have to welcome the paying people. Because
hello, high rollers.
The high rollers.
Welcome to the VIP section.
Oh my god! I was at this. I think I'm never going to run about to run at what? Let's hot fresh take.
Actually, start Sharif.
Sharif's buffering.
I don't think I will ever run out of dumb things to tell you about that I've experienced in this country in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
I was at an art fair a couple of weeks ago, and I have a whole bunch of things to complain about there. But tucked away in this little corner that I thought was part of the art fair was an advertisement for a wellness center that was due to open a week after that show. And so you go down one flight of escalator, and then you find 2 beds in the sort that you would find at a spa. And then there are a couple of ladies standing, handing out flyers, and then talking about, I was like, okay, why do you have the beds? Are you hosting a session here? And it's no, it's to try to you could just have the flyers and we talk about it. And I was she was trying to explain to me, they called it the longevity something. It was oh, we have the Swedish, it's a major Swedish or Swiss or something. And she was oh, and I was okay, I understand. It's a spa. She was as I have insulted her entire family and ran over her dog or something. She took such offense to me saying the word, oh, it's a spa.
Yeah.
He was we don't call it a spa. We call it a wellness center. And in fact, because of our longevity thing, and I was I'm so sorry. And I was just I was very casually okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah. Oh, is it one? Oh, yeah. Of course I know what that is. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you enjoy your afternoon. And I was just anyway, it was just one of those things. I was
what were the beds for? Were they just kipping?
No, it was just to show you some sort of that corner was designed as to replicate a room that you would find there.
Oh, right. So it was
it's a demo, I guess, a chaos.
It was this is what a bed looks like.
Yes, because it has other stuff around it that you wouldn't. That's why I thought it was weird, because it wasn't quite the environment that you would think of spas, because usually those are isolated. Obviously, you're not going to have people being massaged and out in the open like that. It was sort of having a maquette of a construction project and saying, well, this is going to be the beachfront. But it was the vibes were all off, but I went in with thinking this is part of the art thing. I was oh, why is there beds? Is this some sort of art experiment? Because you don't know. And it was oh, it's a longevity. I was oh, okay. I like to live long. It's my
okay. That's I don't. It sounds like all these stories you tell us about the UAE. It's just like it seems like real Wild West for stuff like that. Like there's no regulation or anything, so people can just be like, "Yeah, we're a wellness center."
People just seem a bit odd.
Yeah,
You've just told us stories about lots of odd things.
Yeah.
Yes, it's hard to think of this as like a normal country where things spring out from within.
Yeah.
It's really genuinely hard because it's so new and recent that everything has to be implanted, right?
Yeah.
So, but the difficulty that I'm finding is I can't quite tell what is being implanted as a business and something to make money and to catch a fad, and what is being built as a sort of to be part of that community. Because the community is transient, and the entire city feels like it's this transient town of where people come and go. So I don't really find anything, like I despise Egypt, like I've lived there most of my life, but I tell you why there's culture there, right? Like there are things that are by the people, good or bad, right? If you go walk around like any parts of the UK, you'd be like, oh, this rundown shop used to do this and used to be that, and I used to, right? There's culture there. Here, you're going to go to places like, well, this opened 4 years ago, and they have some sort of experiment that existed in some other country. Where's the experiment that exists from like this country? And it's almost always like a corporate thing that's like, we're going to do like a camping in the desert thing, like the old, like, that people early on in the country used to do. With Wi-Fi and Mercedes
That
is
sounds
like
so odd.
and it's like incorporate something incorporated part of the blah 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 group, and it's just like, oh, but this is the thingy cam. It's like, you know what I mean?
Are there is there a Lawrence of Arabia themed glamping
like
trip?
a Truman Show? No, there is no. But it's like let's live like we're gonna cut some, we're gonna chop some wood. We're gonna have pre-made like. I don't know, some sort of meat that we're going to cook on the wood, and we're going to have some surviving skills dude who teaches you how to tie a knot, 6 different knots, and teaches you how to pitch up a tent that isn't one of those pre-made tents, and teaches you how to cut and create fire and like sharpen objects and stuff like that, right? As you are 2 kilometers away from like your parked car, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like this is what I mean. It's just like, it's fascinating. I'm never going to run out of things to fucking talk about.
That's mad. I can't wait to visit.
Yeah, please do.
I want to visit out of curiosity for sure. Yeah.
Have I gone mad, or is the paid part of the podcast now a travel podcast?
It's my own.
You got to hook them in. With
I have to talk to someone about this because everyone here is like, well, this is it's normal.
Well,
it's like,
no. You made sure that we've met the coda of Tom stories.
Exactly. There's nothing about a child pooing in Lidl, so we need to make up for
I'm really enjoying this series of photos of every time you visit Lidl.
It's a lot at the moment.
Telling Aiden to do the poo.
My infant son is just like, if he hasn't gone to a shop that day, he won't go to sleep.
Weird.
He has to be taken to a supermarket, otherwise he doesn't settle down.
Is it not just getting outside? It has to be a supermarket?
Yeah, it's got to be Lidl.
He likes the shop.
Is there a smell or something that he likes or something like a
This
food?
is like reason 1000 to not have children, because I can't stand the supermarket.
He's just addicted to capitalism. This is what it does to him.
He just loves he loves commerce. He's well into all that stuff.
Weird.
So yeah, all right. I'm afraid, unfortunately, I've got to do it. I swear it gets longer every time I hear it. Like, anyway, okay. So, can everyone hear me, or have I broken my mic?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, right. So, my pick for this topic, I had to think. I had no idea what I was going to pick for this, and I kept thinking of games I like that didn't necessarily do too well, and and Googling them to see if there was anything similar that came out round about it. And it was like, there was nothing that came up. I was like, surely there was an RPG that came around close to like Jade Empire that was better than Jade Empire. Apparently not. So I ended up with, and it's not, doesn't quite fit, but I'm going to go with it anyway. In terms of column inches, right? Elite Dangerous never really had much of a buzz about it. And it kind of entered the public consciousness at around the same time as Star Citizen, which,
yes,
you know, when we've been doing stories about it recently because they've announced that 1.0 is coming out.
Yeah.
At some point. They didn't even say when, though, did they? They were just like, there will be a 1.0 at some point.
It's been in development for over 10 years, I think.
Did they announce a price?
No.
Because that's usually the point with that game, isn't it? It'll cost you £10,000.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, there's something very weird going on with Star Citizen. But, like, I remember they were both announced in 2014. And, like, I was really excited about Elite Dangerous because I'd been waiting for Elite 4 for, like, because the second Elite game was, like, my favorite game as a child. And there was never anything quite like it thereafter. And you can't go back and play that game now because it's dog shit now because it's like 16-bit and like it's so simplistic nowadays. Like, but like at the time it was incredible. Yeah. So I remember being really excited about Elite Dangerous as the fourth Elite game, and you know, like thinking how amazing it's going to be able to. At the time, David Braben was talking about stuff that you can, funnily enough, do in Starfield now. Where he was like, you can like shoot somebody's engines out and then you can dock with their ship and you can like go onto their ship and like shoot them with a gun. And I remember thinking, wow, that's the future. You can. Todd Howard did it. Fucking Bethesda did it. There we go. And David Braben still hadn't done it. So what do you make of that?
It's funny that my memory of when both games were announced, people were down on Dave Braben's game.
Yeah,
because I think there was like some history of him not delivering on stuff or whatever, and so they were directing people to like more fund, because both of them were crowdfunded. Yeah. Directing people to fund more Star Citizen because of the legacy of I forget his name, the Wing Commander,
Chris
designer,
Roberts.
Chris Roberts. Sorry,
yeah.
Yes.
So like, yeah, I think David Braben had a bit of a reputation because there was like a lot of legal back and forth between him and Ian Bell, I think, who was like the co-creator of Elite, and there was a lot of bad blood there, which is, I think, since been sorted out. I don't know all the details off by heart, but I think that's all sorted out now. But yeah, there was definitely a sense that like the third Elite game was very, very poorly received, and it was really buggy, and it was at a time when like to like issue a patch for a game that had been released, you basically had to release like a new fucking disc. So it was like a crapshoot whether or not people got the patched version, and it just went down in history as like a big blunder. But anyway, I remember being excited about Elite and played it. I thought it was decent. I understood their whole roadmap for it. You know, we haven't got the on-foot stuff in there yet, but we wanted to really nail the space stuff, and it was a really good update to Elite 2, I thought. You know, it's like it's set in a version of this galaxy in it, and it's really believable, and there's basically it was Euro Truck Simulator, but on a galactic scale. That's exactly what it was, and it's all it needed to be, and it was great. And it had some really good stuff, and like the way that hyperspace worked and stuff. The first time you make a hyperspace jump into another system, and then you get there, and the fucking sun is just like in front of you, and no game has ever quite done that since, like where you actually get the scale of what a sun looks like. You know, it was bewildering at the time. But again, people don't talk about Elite Dangerous. People only talk about Star Citizen. And people talk about Star Citizen in terms of like, you know, how fucking terrible the whole proposition is, frankly, at this point.
No, well, actually, there are two kinds of talks about Star Citizen that you're here. Not just the two, like the two extremes. People who are way too into it, who have been invested, who bought the ships, who bought the insurance, who are like, no, man, you don't understand. They're doing things no one has ever done, man.
Yeah.
And these people cannot be reasoned with. Like they're just like, I played alpha.
They're fully bought in. Yeah. It's like
if you're committed for 10 years, I played alpha 0.7.3, man, and then there's one thing that they did up to this point. And then there are the people who are like, I played this on a free weekend, and it seems like a cool tech demo, but this is not a game yet. So
this is really
right.
Yeah,
and these are the two. There is no one in the middle. There's no. Everyone is like everyone doesn't understand each other, and I think it's very amusing to watch like the discourse around that game, and it will be even more so when it becomes something that everyone can buy. If that ever happens in our lifetime.
Well, that's the test, isn't it? If Star Citizen ever comes out as something you can buy on Steam for like 30 quid, let's face it, it's probably going to be like 80 or something.
Oh god!
But like that's the test, isn't it? Because a lot of people are going to buy that for real money and be like, "This is penis. Like what is even here?" But I actually think that David Braben had the better idea, which was to be like, we've got these plans for other things, but we want to make something that's good, like a really good space sim in and of itself first, and then we're going to bolt this other stuff onto it. And then they had like land vehicles in Horizons, I think it was. And then they had the Odyssey expansion, which has gone down like a lead balloon. But the idea is that like there's now first person elements.
It's on foot.
The ship I always find it funny that one of the most like requested elements of a space sim is the ability to not be in space, right? But it really, like, I think Elite Dangerous is its core is a really good game because it's Elite, and like Elite is a really good game, and it's a wonderful update to that. The mechanics of space flight are very unmatched. They're quite
the docking, especially.
And it's just complicated enough that you feel like you're doing it, but it's not so complicated that it's a nightmare to. It's like it's pitched just right. You kind of feel smart when you dock it at a space station, but you're not really doing anything complicated. It's not like fucking Starfield where you just hit a button and it goes, yeah, okay, you're here.
No.
It's like it's a step back from that, but then it's not as bad as something hypothetical that I can't think of at the moment where you're actually expected to know things. It's not Kerbal Space Program, right, where you have to you have to figure out, like, you have to do maths and stuff or whatever, or so like I think it's a great game, and I think it's really nicely placed, and I think we do it a great disservice by talking about Chris Roberts' piece of shit tech demo that is just a money funnel and doesn't appear to have any kind of merit beyond how good it is at fucking convincing people to spend $4,000 on a ship that doesn't exist, to play in a game that doesn't exist yet. But
it really is amusing how time has borne out Braben's way of doing things and his vision compared to like 10 years ago compared to Chris Roberts's. It's really quite amusing. It's really quite amusing to look back.
Yeah, it was seen as the lesser project, and it's like, but that was the one. It works. Like
that released something. People have been playing it for 10 years. There's now it's like people alpha.
They're not 10 years later going, when's the 1.0 coming? The 1.0 was here a while ago, And granted, the latest expansion has gone down a bit poorly in certain areas of the community, but they are improving it, and it is a long. It's a marathon, not a sprint sort of thing. But so that would be my pick. But I don't think it's as exciting a split second, to be fair.
Yeah. But which is it though? Is it the Deep Impact or is it the Armageddon?
Well, I think Elite Dangerous is the Deep Impact because in terms of the public reception, certainly at the time, I think I'm talking about purely in context of like 2014. I think initially Star Citizen was like, but that's the Wing Commander guy, and this is going to be like an MMO where you get to live in the future, and you've got a spacesuit, and you've got your own apartment in a sci-fi Blade Runner city, and basically talking about all this pie in the sky shit that was never going to happen. And people looked at David Braben's alternative, and they were like, "What, you're just fucking cutting about in the space equivalent of a flatbed, trading 200 kilos of luxury goods like between systems and whatever, and it's just very boring in comparison. And Star Citizen was meant to have that Squadron 42 thing, right? And even when you play the free weekends in Star Citizen, there is something very cool about the way that game works, where it's like it's so tactile, and you can see your spacesuit as you're using it. You can get out of your ship and do a spacewalk and stuff that no other space game does. So like you have to give it credit for that, but
it's just a bunch of tech demos. It's just a bunch of tech demos linked together. I don't think there's a game there.
Very loosely linked together as
Very
well.
loosely linked together.
So what you're saying is that they're both Deep Impact in different ways.
You know what I want to do? I want to watch Deep Impact again because I remember Armageddon being super dumb. And there's this running... It's a Michael Bay movie, so it kind of has to. But I remember this running joke of when NASA recruits new engineers, I think, or new astronauts, or I think just for any job, they do a competition where they watch the movie and then they're asked to name how many things are scientifically inaccurate in it. I think the record is 74 or 47. And so is Deep Impact, like, is it going to be, after all these years, is Deep Impact actually the smarter, more interesting story? And no? Okay.
No.
Fine. Okay.
No, it's bollocks. No, because Deep Impact is just as stupid the other way.
Okay.
Deep Impact is like,
all right, fine.
It basically says like, oh, surely surely we'd be able to survive an asteroid impact if we just trusted in the philosophy of Hillary Clinton. Like it's just as magical and sort of crappy, but it doesn't have Aerosmith or Bruce Willis or
all right.
Ben Affleck. So yeah, I think are we all going to watch Deep Impact now just to see like? It has been a while since
I don't remember it. I remember a lot of Armageddon, but because Armageddon
maybe
has been, but Deep Impact, I have just very little memory of it. I thought that they had the same premise and as far as like sending people there, but you're saying no, so I genuinely don't remember.
I mean, if I remember rightly, Deep, you can tell like the one piece of research nobody did for this podcast just to watch either fucking film. But like from what I remember, Deep Impact, the asteroid like does hit, doesn't it? Like,
I mean,
like they come out of a bunker at the end?
The name certainly suggests it.
It's got. I was going to say it's got to, otherwise it's false advertising.
It does hit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's like it's pure. Yeah, and they survive it through the power of liberalism. Which which is it's fine. Anyway, all right, okay. So I better let everyone go, but thank you for listening to the first premium edition of our little
the first
show.
one.
It's going to be it's going to be a regular thing. Tuesdays at 2 p.m. or thereabouts is what we're going for. But subject to Dragon's Dogma 2 coming out, for example, that week. My God. Yeah. So in the coming weeks on the channel, me and Sharif have got a nice video planned with Alex where we're going to talk about which you should buy if you have the option to buy Dragon's Dogma 2 or Rise of the Ronin. We've got a really comprehensive look at the pros and cons of each game and which you should pick if you have the option. For most people, don't have the option of buying either or, right? Surely the PS5's not. Is it like? It's a large minority of homes that it's in, but it's not like it's by no means. There's definitely more PS4s in the world, right?
Neither of them are on PS4.
No, I know, but I'm saying like PS5 is like it's not like hit like saturation point, is it?
I think it has. It's pretty much I think on close to PS4 numbers now.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well,
yeah,
just ignore
I think.
Okay.
But by sheer just statistics, Dragon's Dogma has a better chance because it's on more platforms. So it's on Xbox and PC. PC obviously being a big deal.
Yeah, it's also the better game.
Don't spoil the video. It's going to be actually good because Alex is going to be in it instead of me.
Right. Okay.
Maybe we'll do a video just specifically for Ronin where we just talk about like how very Western it is as far as like game design philosophy.
Yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait for Rise of the Ronin. I knew Dragon's Dogma 2 was going to be good because the first one is brilliant, right? But I've actually been more excited about Rise of the Ronin because I knew it was going to be slightly jank and maybe not quite. I think, funnily enough, the game you can most compare it to is the first Dragon's Dogma because it's that studio doing something quite outside of their comfort zone and doing a big open world thing and basically looking at stuff like Assassin's Creed and Skyrim or whatever, and going, what does our version of that thing look like? But this is their first stab at it. So,
But I think Dragon's Dogma, either through sheer will or because they didn't have the budget, rejected a lot of the things that it looked at or filtered them in a way. This game feels like there's a hand guiding it that is very much moving it towards accepting those things, which I think is the real reason why those games play completely differently.
Nice. All right. Okay. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll speak to you later. Speak to you next week.
Bye.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.